4 o'clock news on 7. I'm Deanne Halagaitawai. As most of you now know, Tony Abbott, representative leader of the Liberal Party, and Kevin Rudd, the Labour Party leader, are going head-to-head to become Australia's Prime Minister. It's been years since Australia had its share of political dramas, but in terms of pure politics, it's hard to think of a more dramatic day in this country's history than Sir John Kerr and the Whitlam dismissal. For those who were around December 1974 would have known that John Kerr became Australia's Governor-General. The following year, on the 11th of November, Kerr did one of the most controversial acts in Australian politics when he dismissed the Whitlam government. Let's turn live to Catherine Woods at the Parliament House for more on this story. Hi Catherine, can you tell us the characters and the events that were involved in the Whitlam dismissal?
Well, Deanne, it's been 39 years since Sir John Kerr's dismissal on Prime Minister Gough Whitlam. Many Australians considered Kerr's dismissal of the government as undemocratic and unconstitutional, due to the fact that Prime Minister Gough Whitlam had appointed Kerr as Governor-General on the 11th of July 1974. A few months earlier from this dismissal, October 14th, Whitlam demanded Rex Connor to resign in disgrace due to misleading Whitlam himself and the Parliament over ongoing negotiations for overseas loans with a Pakistani loan dealer by the name of Tirath Kemlani. Connor was then replaced by Paul Keating. The following day, Malcolm Fraser, the opposition leader, announced that the Senate will delay 2 money bills until Whitlam calls an election. On the 16th October, the Senate blocked the bills whilst the House of Representatives boosted a motion of censure in the government.
So what led to this dismissal anyway?
It's simple. What led to this dismissal was that the Whitlam government lost control of the Senate and was unable to get the budget passed by the Senate, which resulted in the government not being able to control and run Australia. Due to this, Governor-General John Kerr had no choice but to sack Whitlam and his federal Labour government on the 11th of November 1975, replacing them with the opposition leader Malcolm Fraser to be a caretaker Prime Minister until another election was possible. Here I have with me today is a copy of Governor-General John Kerr's letter to Gough Whitlam. I'll just read it aloud. Dear Mr. Whitlam, in accordance with Section 64 of the Constitution, I hereby determine your appointment as my chief advisor and head of the government. It follows that I also hereby determine the appointments of all of the ministers in your government. You have previously told me that you would never resign or advise an election of the House of Representatives or a double dissolution, and that the only way in which such an election could be obtained would be by my dismissal of you and your ministerial colleagues. As it appears likely that you would today persist in this attitude, I decided that if you do, I will determine your commission and state my reasons for doing so. You have persisted in your attitude, and I have accordingly acted as indicated. I attach a statement of my reasons which I intend to publish immediately. It is with a great deal of regret that I have taken this step, both in respect of yourself and your colleagues. I propose to send for the leader of the opposition and to commission him to form a new caretaker government until an election can be held. Yours sincerely, John Kerr. Okay, so the main points to why this was so controversial was that because the country was being controlled by a non-elected government, and that the action taken by John Kerr was not enshrined in any laws being made.
Wow, that letter is very straightforward, Catherine. What do you think the Labour Party supporters felt about this, and do you think it would have been a very tough time for them?
Indeed it was, Deanne. Well, when the news of the dismissal was announced, it stunned the Australian media and population. The Labour Party supporters were very angry with this decision that by the late afternoon of the sacking, a crowd gathered outside this area of the Parliament House calling "We Want Gough." And in other cities of Australia, students and unionists stormed Liberal Party headquarters and staged mass demonstrations protesting the sacking. You could say that many of the Labour Party supporters felt cheated on by the opposition and disloyal by them, hypnotising the Labour Party to think that their government was not suitable to govern the country. Many questions have been asked about Whitlam's dismissal, but the one question that caught my attention was, should the Governor-General have warned Mr Whitlam of what he would do if the budget was not passed? And the answer to that was, it has been suggested that had Kerr done so, Whitlam would have Kerr sacked. Whitlam says that he would not have done this because it would only have made himself look bad. This we would never really know what Whitlam would have done if John Kerr was to warn him. Back to you, Deanne.
Thank you, Catherine. We'll be back from a short break.
This is how we do it.
This is Steve. He did his taxes at Jackson Hewitt and just found out how much he'll be getting back this year. Boy, is he happy there in the neighborhood. Want to feel as excited as Steve at tax time? Jackson Hewitt's How You Do It. Meet with one of our neighborhood tax pros today to estimate your refund free.
This is 7 News.
Hello and welcome again. For those who've just joined us, we've previously talked about the dismissal of our former Prime Minister Gough Whitlam and how it made Australian history in politics. One thing we will never forget about Gough Whitlam's time was the successful campaign It's Time, led by the Australian Labor Party under Whitlam himself in the 1972 election. We now cross live to Bethany Parker at the Blacktown Civic Centre where it all began. Bethany?
Thank you, Deanne. As you can see, I am here at the Blacktown Civic Centre where it did all began. The campaign was to aim to convince Australians that it was time to vote for his party, the Labor Party, back into government position after 23 years spent into the opposition. The campaign concentrated heavily on the mistakes made by the Liberal Party Prime Minister, William McMahon, who claimed that his party's 23 years of government was a reason for voting it in once again. In Whitlam's It's Time speech, he pointed out three great aims that his program had. They were to promote equality, involve the people of Australia in decision-making processes for our land, and liberate talent and uplift the horizon of the Australian people. We will make preschool education available to every child, is what he said. Those weren't the only changes he had up his sleeves. His party announced that they were going to abolish fees at universities and colleges of advanced education, intended to raise the basic pension rate to 25% of weekly earnings, establish a universal health insurance system, also price justification tribunal, change the emphasis in migration from government to family reunion, and to retain migrants that were already in Australia.
That was big changes he was planning for the nation.
It doesn't end there, Deanne. The Whitlam government was also planning to abolish conscription, fulfill, also willingly to give the Aborigines their land rights. Many had described Gough Whitlam to be a handsome, impeccably dressed, strikingly tall, confident, clever, well-educated, and always at his oratorical best man. After Whitlam's campaign, It's Time, the Labor Party once again had a majority in the House of Representatives and the right to form a government. Back to you, Deanne.
Thank you, Bethany. Gough Whitlam was an amazing man that tried to change the face of the Australian government upon the public. Whitlam promised an end to the Australian involvement in the Vietnam War and an end to conscription into the Australian Armed Forces. And although he was unable to fulfill these promises due to his early resignation as Prime Minister, He had confidence that the Labour Party will one day rise and forever change the Australian government, helping the nation. His legacy will forever be with us. We'll be back with sports with Drew Hudson.
You're right. That's a fifth floor problem.
Not in my house. No, no, no. Not today.
Jimmy, how happy are folks who save hundreds of dollars switching to Geico?
Happier than Dikembe Mutombo blocking a shot.
Nice.
Get happy. Get Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.